Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Create your bright future. Make your life a masterpiece. Imagine no limitations on what you can be, have, or do. You can decide what you are going to think in any given situation. Your thoughts and feelings determine your actions, and actions determine the results you get. Do what you can with all you have, wherever you are. The future belongs to the competent. Get good, get better, be the best. Things work out best for those who make the best of how things work out. The only beautiful path is the one you create. We are the creators of our own future. Without effort and enthusiasm, all of that could not be achieved. Whatever your future depends on yourself. This is where it all starts, a journey to achieve the future. Focus on our goals, or will we be left behind by others? Determine your own path. The one thing that you have that nobody else has is you, your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. So write and draw and build and play and live.
Ladies and gentlemen, the International Conference of Ethics on Business, Economics, and Social Science, in conjunction with the Annual Conference of Management Challenges 2020, is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to extend our warmest greeting to our eminent guest, Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, the Honorable Professor Dr. Margana M. Hum M.A., Head of EIA for Yogyakarta, Dr. Hardo Basuki M. Sos SCCA, Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Dr. Siswanto MPD, Vice Dean of Academic Affairs, Vice Dean of Resource and Finance, and Vice Dean of Student and Alumnus Affairs of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Excellencies, today's speakers, distinguished guests, heads and boards of study departments, lecturers of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, and also we would like to welcome all of the presenters and participants of the seminar. Good morning and welcome to the International Conference of Ethics on Business, Economics, and Social Science in conjunction with the Annual Conference of Management Challenges 2020. Hosted in Yogyakarta, this conference is presented by the Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, with the selected theme, The Challenges of COVID-19 Disruption at the Future Education and Manpower Planning as a response to the emerging global issues we're facing right now. My name is Zahrot Solihah, and I feel honored to be your host today. Ladies and gentlemen, as a start of our opening ceremony, we will sing the national anthem of the Republic of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. And we would also like to invite you to all rise and sing it together with us. Thank you. You may be seated now. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving on, let me mention to you our agendas for today. First is the report from the head of committee. Second is the welcoming speech by Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Third is the speech by the head of IAI, Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia. Fourth is the opening speech by the Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Fifth is the plenary session by the keynote speakers. Sixth is the parallel session. And the last one will be closing. Starting the first agenda, the report from the head of committee. Please welcome Ms. Arum Darmawati, MM.
The Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Professor Dr. Margono, the Honorable Vice Rectors, Deans, Director of Graduate Schools, and Head of International Institutions in Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, the Honorable Dean, Vice Deans, Head of Department in Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Dr. Hardo Basuki from Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia, and the Honorable Invited Speakers, Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University, Australia, Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi from Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Hasbullah Azhari from University Teknologi Petronas, and Dr. Muhammad Hasib, distinguished guests and all participants of the conference. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon you all. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let's thanks to God, the Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, for giving us mercies and blessings so that we can gather here virtually today to join this conference. Secondly, we would like to welcome all of you to the 7th International Conference of Ethics on Business, Economics, and Social Science, which is conjunction with the 3rd Annual Conference of Management Challenges organized by Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Through this conference, we try to invite scholars, practitioners, and students to respond to further issues led by various academic disclosures. This conference is a premier platform for the presentations of a novel and creative research result in the field of management, business, economics, and social science. The conference will hopefully bring together leading researchers, scientists, students in the domain of scientific interest from all around the world. This year, our topic is the challenges of COVID-19, disruptions in future education and workforce planning. Actually, this conference was scheduled to be offline, but unfortunately, due to COVID-19 pandemic, we should hold this seminar online. We hope that all the participants could still enjoy the seminar, although it is done virtually. We are also pleased to inform that we are in collaboration with several international journals indexed by Scopus, and as a report, we have 57 presenters with 41 papers and more than 500 participants registered for this conference from around Indonesia and other countries such as Australia, India, and Malaysia. I believe that this conference can be successfully held because of the efforts from many parties. Therefore, we would like to express our deepest and sincere gratitude to the Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, the Dean of Faculty of Economics, and all members of the program committee for the hard work for preparing this seminar. A very special gratitude goes to the invited speakers, Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University, Australia, Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi from Universitas Indonesia, and Dr. Hasbullah Azhari from University Teknologi Petronas, Malaysia, for sharing their insight with us today. Finally, this conference would not be possible without the excellent papers contributed by the authors. We would like to thank all the authors for their contributions and participation in this conference. And we do hope that all the papers can be published in the international journals indexed by Scopus. We hope that this program will further stimulate empirical and conceptual research in social science and provide better views on the social science development. I think that's all that we can say. Please do enjoy this conference. Don't forget to always stay safe, healthy, and happy. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Ms. Arum. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is welcoming speech by the respected Dean of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Please welcome Dr. Siswanto, MPD.
Thank you, Ms. Jahra. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Rector at Internasional Negeri Yogyakarta, Profesor Dr. Margono MUMA, Vice Rector, Dean, Director of Graduate School, Head of Institute, and all lecturers in Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Vice Dean and the Head of Division of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, distinguished guest speakers, Dr. Judith Magalong from Murdoch University, Perth, Australia, Dr. Frita Faisal Hastiadi, MA, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Indonesia, Associate Professor Dr. Hasbullah Asyari from Management and Humanities Department, University Technology Petronas Malaysia, Dr. Muhammad Haseb from International Journal on Innovation, Creativity and Change, and all respective international seminar participants. It is my great pleasure to be here to be back this remarkable event in our faculty, and particularly to give a few words to open this international seminar. Welcome to this very special occasion. Let me first of all extend to everyone here my warmest greeting and heartfelt welcome to this important occasion. I'd like also to thank you all for participating in this international seminar, annual conference of management challenge in conjunction with International Conference of Ethics of Business, Economics and Social Science. The topic of the seminar is the challenge of COVID-19 disruption at future education and manpower planning. It has been 7 months that the world has been in pandemic COVID-19 with also many impacts on all aspects of life, include education. There have been major changes in education planning and implementation that need more attention. Faculty of Economics Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, as an education institution, is committed to addressing the problem. It is concerned the fact that this international seminar is held. In short, the purpose of seminar is to identify the challenge and problem of education and manpower planning, both as theory and practice, to explore some concept or theory of education and manpower planning which are appropriate to individual and social development, and to formulate concept of education and manpower planning that can be used as foundation in developing theory and practice of education. It is hoped that the seminar will be able to serve a platform to further research and teaching collaboration among participants. I'd like again to thank you all for participating in international seminar. Thank you to the International Committee. Thank you, Rector at Intern of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, for your attendance and will to give a welcome speak and to official open today seminar. I would like to conclude my speech by wishing you all a successful international seminar. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Siswanto, for the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the upcoming speech will be delivered by the head of IAI, Ikatan Akuntan Indonesia. Please welcome Dr. Hardo Basuki, MSOS, SCCA.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Rector of the Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Professor Dr. Margono, Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Dr. Siswanto, Honorable Chairperson of the International Conference of Ethics on Business, Economics and Social Science, Dr. Ani Widayati, Honorable Chairperson of the Annual Conference of Management Challenges, Mrs. Arum Dharmawati MM, Honorable Speaker, Dr. Judith McCollum, Murdoch University, Australia. Honorable Speaker, Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Indonesia. Honorable Speaker, Dr. Hasbullah Azhari, University Technology Petronas, Malaysia. Honorable Speaker, Dr. Muhammad Hasib, International Journal of Innovation, Creativity and Change. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you at the opening ceremony of the webinar held by the Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, in the third annual conference on the topic of challenges of COVID-19 disruption at future education and manpower planning. Secondly, allow me, on behalf of the Institute of Indonesia Chartered Accountant, District of Yogyakarta, to give a special thanks and appreciation goes to Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, who initiated and organized this webinar. As we already know, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected educational system worldwide, leading to the near total closure of school, universities, and colleges. According to UNICEF monitoring, 134 countries are currently implementing nationwide closure, and 38 are implementing local closure, impacting about 98% of the world student population. School closure impact not only students, teachers, families, but have far-reaching economic and societal consequences. School closure in response to the pandemic have shed light on various social and economic issues, including student debt, digital learning, food insecurity, homelessness, as well as access to childcare, healthcare, housing, internet, and disability of services. The impact was more severe for disadvantaged children and their families, causing interrupted learning, compromised nutrition, children problem, and consequent income costs to family who could not work. In response to school closure, UNESCO recommended the use of distant learning program and open educational application and platform that school and teachers can use to reach learners remotely and limit the disruption of education. Furthermore, there is now a great deal of discussion concerning the impact of COVID-19 on and the implication for working practices and human resource management. Much of the content and comment on this topic tend to be of a general nature, offering observation and guidance that seeks to define what a new normal might be. For example, that remote working will become the norm, or that working practices will become more flexible. While this may be indeed what happened, because COVID-19 is a global pandemic, we need to understand its impact on working practices, well-being, and human resource management in a specific context. It is likely many changes will be common across country contexts, but we should also expect, given institutional differences, that there will be localized nuances. Finally, I wish the seminar successful, and I wish you have a most fruitful day with interesting and stimulating discussion and exchange of knowledge. May God bless all of you. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Hardo Basuki. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next agenda, we would like to welcome the Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta to give an opening speech and also officially open today's seminar. Please welcome the Honorable Professor Dr. Margana M.Hum, M.A.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Honorable Head of Indonesian Accountant Association, Bapak Dr. Hardo Basuki MSOS, the Honorable Keynote Speaker and panel speakers, dear Vice Rectors, Dean of Faculty of Economics, all deans, Director of Graduate School of Yogyakarta State University, Head of Institute of Education Development and Quality Assurance, Head of Institute of Research and Community Services, Head of Entrepreneurship Management and Development Body, Vice Deans of Faculty of Economics, Heads and Secretaries of Departments, coordinators of the study programs at Faculty of Economics, all lecturers, the chairpersons of the conference committee, distinguished presenters, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. May peace be upon us all. First of all, let us thank Allah, the Almighty, for blessing and guiding us into the right path, and for granting all means and opportunities together here to attend this very fruitful and tremendous occasions of the annual conference on management challenges, as abbreviated ACoMC, in conjunction with the International Conference on Ethics of Business, Economics, and Social Science, as abbreviated ICEBESS, in 2020, hosted by Faculty of Economics, Yogyakarta State University, through virtual mode. It is greatly honored and pleased for me to warmly welcome all of you in this conference. Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is evident that the COVID-19 pandemic has spread with alarming speed, infecting millions of people around the world, causing a great number of people die, and bringing economic activity to near standstill as countries impose tight restrictions on movement to minimize and halt or stop the spread of the virus. As the health and human toll grows, the economic damage is already evident and represents the largest economic shock that the world has experienced in decades. This suggests that the establishment of being agile people, including agile students, characterized with having high resilience, being able to adjust at any situations, having ready thinking skills, critical and creative thinking skills, having good communication practices and networks, being disciplined, and others should become the main concern of all parties, including Yogyakarta State University. In reference to the above issues, Faculty of Economics of Yogyakarta State University is keen on responding to minimize the risk of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is why the topic of the study conference deals with the challenge of COVID-19 disruption at future education and manpower planning. It is aimed at providing a forum for scholars, lecturers, researchers, teachers, practitioners, and students to intensively share ideas under the topic mentioned and to make collaboration across institutions and countries. Distinguished invited speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, to gain the objectives, the committee has succeeded in inviting some prominent experts as the keynote speaker and plenary speakers from different countries, namely Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University, Perth, Australia. Second, Dr. Fitria Faisal Hastiadi, SE, MSE, MA from University of Indonesia. The third one is Associate Professor Dr. Hasbullah Asari from University of Technology Petronas, UTP, Malaysia. Therefore, in this opportunity, please allow me to warmly express many thanks to them all. Added to this, it is unwise not to appreciate all delegates and participants who have managed to take part in this today's conference. I do hope this conference will bring benefits to all the participants and contribute to the upbringing of the scientific life. Distinguished invited speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is really aware that this conference could not have been made possible without any helps from many parties, including the Dean of Faculty of Economics, Bapak Dr. Siswanto MPD, and his staff members, vice deans, the delegates from many institutions, the head of the committee and committee members, and others. Therefore, I should appreciate their work and dedication and express many thanks to them all. I do apologize for any shortcomings which you may find during this conference. Finally, I wish you get a fruitful and pleasant forum and enjoy yourself during this virtual conference. With the great word of Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, it is a pleasure for me to declare the official opening of the annual conference on management challenges in conjunction with the International Conference on Ethics of Business, Economics, and Social Science in 2020. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Margana, for the very wonderful speech. Distinguished guests, as for the plenary session, we will have 3 keynote speeches from 3 speakers. Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University, Australia, Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi, MSc MA from the Faculty of Economics, Universitas Indonesia, and Dr. Hasbullah Ashari from Management and Humanities Department, University Teknologi Petronas, Malaysia. This session will be guided by our moderator. She is a lecturer from Department of Accounting and also the head of International Affairs Office of Faculty of Economics, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta. Please welcome Ms. Budi Tiara Novitasari, MSE.
Thank you, Ibu Zahro. The Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Profesor Dr. Margana M.Hum M.A., Head of IAI Yogyakarta, Mr. Hardo Basuki M.Sos ACCA, and then the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Economics, Dr. Siswanto MPD, the Honorable Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, Vice Dean for Resources and Financial Affairs, and also Vice Dean for Student and Alumni Affairs. The Honorable Mr. and Madam Speakers, distinguished guests, and also all of the presenters and participants, thank you for being here all today. Good morning and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to say welcome to all of you to the annual Conference of Management Challenge in conjunction with International Conference of Ethics on Business, Economics, and Social Science. In this occasion, we're going to have an opportunity to share ideas and listening to presentations from our prominent speakers, whom we believe will enrich our insights and knowledge regarding the theme of our conference today. Before the presentation begins, allow me to inform you that today we will have 3 different sessions. And initially we're going to have 4 speakers. We will have Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University, and then we're going to have Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi from Universitas Indonesia. We're going to have Dr. Hasbullah Ashari from University Teknologi Petronas, Malaysia, and also Dr. Muhammad Hasib from International Journal of Innovation, Creativity, and also Change. Well, we're going to divide it into 3 different sessions. For each session, we're going to have in total an hour, 35 to 40 minutes for the presentation for each speakers, and then we're going to have the question and answering session. The first session, we're going to have Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University. And then after that, following the second, third, and unfortunately, our 4th speaker is unable to join us today due to the technical problems, but hopefully good news is coming soon. Well, before we begin our session today, I also would like to remind to all of our participants that you can join us by raising questions. Probably if you have questions throughout our discussion, you can type it in our chat room. I will compile that and I will help you to mention it later on at the Q&A session. If you want to post it in Bahasa Indonesia, I will help you to translate that as well. And if you wish to show a little bit of your beautiful voice later on, we're also inviting you to put the raise your hand button during the question and answering session. So firstly, allow me to introduce the first presenter, Dr. Judith McCallum from Murdoch University. The first presenter, Dr. Judith McCallum, earns her Bachelor of Science from Newcastle University, and then the Diploma of Education from Newcastle University, and also Bachelor of Educational Studies from Murdoch University. Her interests are focusing on social and cognitive interaction for learning and development, effective learning environments in a range of educational and community contexts such as professional learning, motivational change and development, intergenerational exchange, collaborative learning, and teaching. She is the former Dean of Education Faculty for Murdoch University, but she is now focusing on the topics that I mentioned to you earlier. She has published books entitled A Review of Training for Participation in Mentoring, the Preparation and Support of Mentors and Mentees, and also published numerous journals, joining and presenting in numerous conferences related to her interests. And today, she's going to join us to share her presentation on challenges of post-COVID-19 education system. Without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Judith McCallum. The time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the organising committee for inviting me to present to you today. And I would like to say hello, and I'm pleased to be here to all the fellow speakers and participants. I'll say Selamat pagi. I hope that's a reasonable translation. I'm going to speak today about challenges and opportunities of COVID-19 for education. I think we have to be careful not to just think about the challenges that this pandemic presents for us, but also the opportunities. My screen behind me is part of the campus at Murdoch University where I teach. It's called Bush Court, and it has lots of trees and grass and places for people to sit. Over the last 6 months, it's been pretty empty. But as people are starting to return to the university campus, there's been a few people. And I think we have to think about what has happened, reflect on it, and consider the future. I'm going to share my screen of the PowerPoint that I've presented, and this will hopefully allow you to see some of the key points that I'm talking about, as well as listen to me. I'll try to speak as clearly as I can in English so that you can understand me. Can someone please enable me to share my screen? Thank you. Thank you. So this is the title of my presentation, and in the background there is Bush Court at the university. Now, I'm going to speak on a couple of different topics. This is the organisation of my presentation. I'm going to look firstly at coronavirus in a global economy and look particularly at the response in Australia. I'm going to consider the challenges for education, both in universities and schools, and then think about some of the opportunities that this has presented to do things differently. Then the ongoing impacts on students and teachers, both in schools and universities, and then some discussion. If you have a question, please write it in the chat, and we can think about those in the last while. I'm looking at the situation in Australia because that's what I know. It's from my observations, from my readings and discussion with university and school-based colleagues. I'm taking the perspective of a university academic, but also as a grandparent, because I've had a lot to do with my grandchildren over this period. I touch on challenges and opportunities, and also our possible futures from an Australian perspective. Now, I don't have to tell any of you what's happened in the global economy. We all know that this is a very contagious new coronavirus. It started in the end of 2019, appeared first in China, and it's spread by February, the end of February. It spread to 45 countries, and it wasn't declared a pandemic till the 11th of March. That happens to be my birthday, so it's one date I remember. Many countries initiated lockdown, and this restricted movement with, as we know, the economic repercussions of doing this, restricting people's movement. The Tokyo Olympics was officially postponed, and in many countries there's been a second wave of infections. In Australia, the second wave has been much stronger than the first, and it's mainly been in one of the states of Australia, Victoria. The death toll, as we know, is officially just over 1 million, but many people consider that this is an underestimate, and we may have millions, more millions of people die before this pandemic is ended. So it really is a health emergency. But in that health emergency, there are implications for many other parts of the community, including education. The last pandemic was the Spanish flu in the 1918-20 period, and that went for a number of years and killed many millions of people. Now, before I go on to talk about Australia, I have a map here of Australia just so that everybody's familiar. We do have a number of states in Australia. The most populated ones are New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. I'm on the way in which that Perth is quite isolated in its most isolated pandemic. Now in Australia, things happened quite quickly. The first identified positive case was of a Chinese national who went into Melbourne, and one of the responses to that was to restrict people from China in Australia. High rate. There's an emergency plan on the 8th of March.
Sorry, Dr. Judith, we're kind of losing your voice here. Okay, the participants please kindly wait for a while. We're looking for the, Ibu Judy is currently working on finding a better.
I'm back.
Okay.
Can you see me now?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I've changed my internet connection, so hopefully this will be more stable.
Okay, thank you.
So I was talking about what had happened in Australia, and I think some of the key parts of the response in Australia was to set up a emergency plan with a national cabinet that coordinated the response. This was the Prime Minister, the premiers of each state, and all the health experts, the health ministers in each jurisdiction, and they relied very much on the input from science, from health experts who were knowledgeable around pandemics and were working on this particular pandemic and the effects. Of course, everybody's been growing in their knowledge, so it was moving feast as to what was considered to be health advice. In the middle of March, Western Australia, where I am, and Victoria declared a state of emergency.
Sorry, Dr. Judith, can you please share your screen again? Because
I need to share it again.
Yeah.
Sorry. There we are. Can you see it now?
Yes, clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I forgot to do that again when I reconnected. So this enabled each state in Australia to enact particular strategies that were different from other states, although there was an organising national cabinet that tried to keep the response similar across Australia. And the share market dropped a lot that day. It has since improved, but I understand today with the President of the United States being infected with COVID-19, it's also gone down again. Anyone entering Australia had to self-isolate for 14 days. So this was from the middle of March. And then on the 17th of March, Australians were not allowed to travel abroad. So that is still in place. Australians cannot leave Australia. On the 20th of March, Australia closed the borders to all non-citizens and non-residents. So anybody who was not a citizen and not a resident is unable to enter Australia. Those who are citizens and residents have to wait in a queue to get back because we're only allowing 2,000 people a week, 2,000 a week to come in to Australia because of the quarantine that's required. And currently the quarantine is in a hotel at your own expense for 2 weeks. The state borders started to be restricted, and Western Australia has closed its border with the rest of Australia. Some of the states have just started to open their borders. Another thing that occurred was that Indigenous communities, our Aboriginal communities, were restricted in access, so that many of those are still closed because it was considered that these people were more susceptible to the coronavirus. And so they've been kept safe. On the 23rd of March, all restaurants, gyms, cinemas closed. Gatherings of people restricted, first to 500, then to 100, then 20, then 10, then 5. And then Australians were urged to stay at home. But essential services were kept open. This included supermarkets, pharmacies, petrol stations, etc., and schools. In Australia, the health advice has been that schools can stay open. This is not the same as many other countries. And so on the 23rd of March, the only schools that were going to close were in Victoria. This was all on health advice. Now, looking at the challenges for education. Very early in the piece, in March, it became evident that there were less international students in 2020. And so this was going to mean a reduced income for many Australian universities. At Murdoch University, where I am, there were also a number of changes that came into force very rapidly. The 17th of March, we were told that if you could work at home, do so. And so they changed the working from home guidelines so that there weren't so many impediments to do that and everybody could work at home. There were temporary amendments to the assessment policy because we had exams that were face-to-face and in large rooms. So that had to be changed. From the 26th of March, all research activities on campus were suspended and no face-to-face field work involving humans was to take place. So these were some of the changes that happened very quickly in March, and we all went home basically and learnt to do things differently. In schools, Australian schools, there was a different situation. From the end of March, many of them did close, and parents were urged to keep their children home if they could. But the policy on schools changed. The government, the Commonwealth government, that's the Australian government, very much wanted schools to be open. And teachers were thus an essential service. Initially, it was essential workers' children who could go to school. That's other teachers, people in health professions, and others in supermarkets, and those who were needed to keep the essential services running. I know that my grandson still was allowed to go to school because his mother was a school teacher, and schools had to try new ways for things like drop off and pick up of children so that there was no contact between parents and school teachers, and parents didn't enter the school premises. So there were new ways that people had to develop to do simple things that we were just used to doing, like dropping the child at school or taking them to their classroom. We had to do it differently. Schools also needed to adhere to social distancing so that there was only supposed to be one child per 2 square metres. And so schools had to work on ways to use larger classrooms, have children out in the playground at different times. And so the school day had to be reorganised in order for social distancing and the restrictions required by health advice to be put in place. So that's what happened in Australia. Universities went online very quickly and closed down. Schools initially closed down. Teachers worked on ways to do things differently and then ended up going back into the classroom. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about Murdoch University. Murdoch University is in Perth. It's a relatively new university. It's under 50 years old. It's a progressive, innovative university. It's one of the 7 innovative research universities in Australia. It's always had external students, in other words, students who didn't come on campus, who worked from home or their workplace, and has been increasingly developing online resources for learning. But still, there was a very strong presence of students on campus, and many of the classes had collaborative aspects. So there was a strong focus on group activities for learning, project work, and working together. So Murdoch had these extra ways of working that needed to be fitted in with a move online. So I want to consider the opportunities for education that this brings. At Murdoch University, we had readiness to teach online survey of staff. So in order to find out what staff knew and what they needed to know to go online, there was a survey, which most staff filled in. Then there was focused training and professional learning opportunities for staff to prepare for online teaching and learning, and for different ways of assessing students, because some of the ways we had used before would not be able to be implemented. And there were many resources developed. So what happened was that we went online with pre-recorded lectures. Many people had already recorded lectures, but that happened usually when you were actually conducting the lecture, it was recorded. Now we had to pre-record those. We used Moodle, which is our learning management system, with Collaborate, and Collaborate was used for tutorials, which allows groups to form and to come back. It does have hurdles and it's quite cumbersome at times, especially if the internet connection drops out. And for meetings and events, we had Teams, which is a Microsoft product. So all events were cancelled on campus, and nobody was on campus basically for the first while they were shut down in Australia and Western Australia in particular. Now, what happened in education, because I'm in education at Murdoch, is the current head of our education instigated initially 2 weekly meetings of 1 hour on Teams. Then it became weekly. And this was to provide updates and share strategies that everybody was developing to support student learning. And this became a really important part of our week. Everybody would log on at 10 o'clock on Fridays to hear what the latest updates were from the university, to express what they were doing, and after a while it was to share the strategies that people had developed for their units. So this became a very important part of learning our own professional learning. The other thing that we did, which was really important, was setting up a buddy system to support each other. So each person on staff had another person who was their buddy, and they needed to contact them to see how they were from time to time. Because one of the things I think that's been lost in working at home and going online is that we miss those incidental times when we see someone in the lunchroom or in the corridor and we say, how are you? Can I talk to you for 5 minutes? And that's one of the things that gets lost. I think the buddy system was an important way of trying to compensate for that. But many people develop new methods for doing their classes. And in this semester, the science education teacher actually developed a pack of activities for science education. And students had to come to the car park of the university to pick up their pack. And then they could go home and do their little experiments with their pack. So there was an initial contact with a lecturer, but then the students went away and did that themselves with instructions, and there was some online tutorials through Collaborate. Others developed more systematic ways of having online groups, and I'm still learning very much how to do this on Collaborate, because it's quite complex to have different groups working on their activities and then going in and out of different groups to see where they're up to bring them all back to the central discussion. The other thing that I have is a network of early career academics that I usually meet with once a month. There can be anything up to 16 of us at any one time, but generally it's less than that. So we started meeting online in teams, and it was an opportunity for some people to ask questions and to express frustration that they couldn't do in the larger group of the weekly staff meetings. And so this was a very important aspect, I think, that enabled people to share what they'd found out, to say, I don't know how we do that. What are they talking about? Where can I find out how to do that? And that was a really important part. So in schools, there was a rapid change in policies. They were closing, they weren't closing, they were closing, they were opening. Some were opening. And then in Victoria, they've closed again. And if there is an infection, then any teacher or student, the school is closed for a couple of days. All the students go home, the school is cleaned, and those who are close contacts have to stay isolated and tested for COVID, and then the school reopens again. In Western Australia, we haven't closed the schools. In fact, they're now open. They were closed for about 4 weeks, but that's all. But what happened was teachers had to develop very quickly creative and innovative ways to provide for all their students. And I think this is one of the key things that's going to be a future activity of teachers, is how do you provide for all students in an online environment, particularly those with learning difficulties, those who have poor internet connections, those who take longer to do things. But teachers have suffered a huge increase in workload and the frustration of things changing. And when schools reopen, the fear that they may get coronavirus because they were at the coalface, so to speak, at the front line of being a essential service. But there were many resources provided for teachers and for parents. Many private schools already had online platforms that they could develop, and government schools started using WebEx as a platform for online learning. I think one of the outcomes has been that parents have begun to understand and appreciate the work that teachers do, and many children found they missed school and the social interactions with teachers and friends, fellow students. So I think there's been a number of things that have happened in schools. I know that in some areas where schools have been closed, the frustration and workload is huge. In Western Australia, the workload is still very large because there are still people who keep their children home because they may be very susceptible to the coronavirus and can't and are trying to keep everybody isolated. There are those who have got behind with school and they're trying to bring them back. There are Year 12 students, their final year at school, who've been studying hard and had a very disrupted year. So there's a lot of variety in the effect that this has had on schools and students. Now, looking at the main impacts, I think there are ongoing impacts, and this is where we start thinking about, so what's changed, what's going to continue to be different? One of the things that's very evident is the technologies for communication. Educators and also many people in the community have become very familiar with communicating by Zoom, Teams, WhatsApp. I've even communicated on WhatsApp with my 98-year-old mother who lives in Sydney. Not that she knew exactly what to do. Someone else had to help her at the other end. But it's also created new possibilities for collaboration. Now, I'm part of a group of about 60 people in Western Australia from universities and government bodies, and we've been working on how we might collaborate in research around the coronavirus. And we would never have got together except for the coronavirus. There are 5 universities in Western Australia and we're all represented, and we currently have a research project looking at the mental health and adaptability of university teachers and students with coronavirus. We don't have any results yet, but this would not have happened except for the coronavirus. And it's been very interesting seeing how people from health, education, business, community groups have come together and shared their expertise without any competition to bring something new together. One of the other things that we've noticed is the increase in online and blended learning. Because in Australia, most universities are still teaching mostly online, even when schools have gone back. And they're starting to reduce staffing levels with the assumption that if you teach online, you don't have so many tutorial groups, it doesn't need so much staffing. And many casuals have not been employed for the second half of 2020. In Australia, the school year goes from February to December. And so we haven't had a big holiday yet. I think the crash may come in December when everybody goes, whew. I think professional learning and development is a really important finding from what's happening here. There's been a rapid increase in professional learning, both in the opportunities for it and the uptake. As Helen Timperley says, a New Zealander, teachers engage in professional learning when it's going to be for the benefit of their students. And that's exactly what happened. Teachers had to engage in professional learning so they could actually teach their students. And I think there'll be more professional learning in how to cater for diverse groups of students. Another thing that's come up that's very important is relationships. The importance of staying in touch and checking in with each other, both staff and students. University finances in Australia are in a dire strait, you could say. The reduced numbers of international students has meant that many universities have had to cut costs substantially. The government doesn't pay as much for students as it used to. Students are having to pay more for education, and without international students and postgraduate students providing more income to universities, they are looking at costs. Many universities in Australia have not reappointed casual staff in the second half of the year, and many have started redundancies of long-term staff. And one of the fears is that there will be less funding for future research and there won't be the next generation of researchers because many of them teach casually to start with and have research jobs that may not be funded. So there is a real issue with what's going to happen about research in Australian universities. Student learning. Many students have had their studies interrupted. Some are behind, depending on how much time they had to spend away from face-to-face learning. Many have become more anxious. The rate of anxiety in Year 12 students is very high, and in Victoria, where they've had to close down again, the rate of anxiety and seeking psychological assistance for mental health has increased dramatically. But there's a particular concern for students with learning disabilities and for disadvantaged groups, both socioeconomically and geographically remote. One of the other things that we've found is the importance of internet and access to the internet and computers. For many students, there's only one computer at home, if there's one at all. And so how do all the students in the family do their schoolwork? How does mum and dad work from home? How do they do this if they haven't got very good internet access? So these are important infrastructure areas that I think all countries are going to have to look at, and Australia included. Now, Murdoch University Bush Court, as I started with, the students are returning on a limited basis because what they're realising that face-to-face social interactions are very important, particularly for mental health. Now, one of the things that happened in WA, because WA has had about 600 cases of coronavirus and no cases for the last 4 months, everybody's almost got back to normal. We still have to have cleaning routines and no more than 2 square metres per person. So there's still social distancing, but you wouldn't think it when you go around Perth at the moment. People are sort of back to everything. One of the things that the government of Western Australia has been doing is encouraging Western Australians to wander out yonder. Now, I wandered out yonder to the Kimberley in July, and the Kimberley is in the north of Western Australia. It's hot and dry and very red. And these are some of the photographs that I took. This is the Bungle Bungles, or the Pernalulu, as the Indigenous people call it. And I learnt about the geology of the area, and I saw many wattles, acacia. This is an acacia here.
Dr.
And
Judith,
that's the floral emblem of Australia.
5 minutes to the
And also I walked in many gorges and swam in holes.
Sorry, Dr.
Now-
Judith, we are 5 minutes to the question and answering session.
Okay, fine. That's good. So wandering out yonder has allowed us to, Western Australians, to learn more about the state where they live and to increase economic activity through tourism, because nobody else can come into Western Australia at the moment. So Western Australia is actually doing quite well economically, but not all sections of the community, some. Now, I have a little bit of discussion here. What we have that COVID has created is rapid change with health, economic and social impacts. Education in particular has had to adapt very quickly, and professional learning has been a priority. There are many challenges. We don't know the long-term effects, health-wise, economically or socially, on teachers, students and families. And that's one of the things we hope to look into with the research that I talked about. But there's plenty of positive evidence. The anecdotal findings, certainly in Western Australia, suggest that many teachers have been coping very well. If they have developed coping strategies and adaptive approach, they've thrived. They've been able to create new ways to work. And some early research from the UK, from the United Kingdom, suggests that school teachers' experiences in the first few weeks were characterised by uncertainty initially. I think we all felt that. Finding a new way forward, worrying about the vulnerable people, understanding the importance of relationships, then teacher identity. Who am I? I'm a capable person, able to do this and be adaptive and to reflect, to be reflective of what's been achieved and what can be achieved. So we think about what will education look like in the future? Will it go back to how it was? Or will education be more creative and innovative? And will we be able to find new ways to diversify and be more flexible in our teaching and learning? I don't think we'll ever go back to how it was. I think we've learnt a lot. We're still learning. But one of the key things that we're going to have to do in education, particularly, is to better understand how different students learn in different environments. We've known that in classrooms, not all students learn the same way. If we have a classroom that's online as well as face-to-face, how do different students go between the two, and how do different students learn, and what can teachers do to support that? I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Judith. Well, it's time for the question and answering session. And I would like to invite our participants to share your questions. You may hit the raise your hand button, or you can also type your questions, and I will help you to read that or even translate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, any questions so far? Well, while waiting, probably I personally have a question for Dr. Judith. You mentioned about social interaction in online learning. Well, I personally think that it's one of the biggest challenges for all of us as educators, because when we're trying to create an education experience for the students, it reminds us that it's supposed to be social presence there, teaching presence, and also cognitive presence. So if you have suggestions to us as lecturers or probably teachers joining us today, how can we make sure that the social interaction is present in our online learning?
Thank you for that question. One of the things that I've found in my research on mentoring is that if you have face-to-face contact or personal contact with people, they are more comfortable to work online after that. Some people find online interaction very difficult, particularly when it's so formalized in the sense that we do on learning management systems. It's captured for posterity kind of thing. It's there, particularly if it's recorded, and what they say online is kept. So we have to be very careful about what we do and how we encourage students. So I think building a relationship, first of all, and if it's not face-to-face, then how are we going to build relationships with individual students? I think that's one key idea. Writing to them, having short videos of welcome and saying a little bit about yourself can be very helpful to make it more personable. That's one thing that we can do. Then when we have we break up for groups, it's a good idea, because collaborative learning is one of the areas that I've been researching and looking at for many years. It's this idea that if someone has a task to do, if what they are doing is very focused and they all have to engage in some way, they all have to contribute in some way, then they're more likely to interact with the other students. And this doesn't just happen. We have to build comfort, a level of comfort for students to interact with each other, to say what they're thinking, and to be able to listen to other people. So there are a number of social skills that are required to do this. It just doesn't happen. So we have to build in ways to develop social skills, to help students to interact, to feel comfortable in the new environment. And then we have to be able to feed back, get ways to feed back what they have thought into the group. Another way that many teachers are trying is to get students to do little videos of themselves, and then they upload those, and then others discuss what they see in a video. So there's different ways to do this. There's I think it's a growing area of teaching strategy is how to do this, and it's going to be a really important area. One of my colleagues has been working on this a great deal, and she's become very expert at it. Part of it is that she sets very specific guidelines. She develops comfort by students understanding the rules of communication, and she leaves them with very short, focused activities to do, and then they come back fairly quickly. So it's moving quickly. And also another colleague who has one of the students actually may be the presenter or the organizer, and so they moderate what's going on. So students have a role, a teaching role in this, and take turns at doing that. So it's giving students different roles, specific roles, and helping them become more confident in that area.
Okay, thank you. We have more questions here from Ibu Ratna Yudiati. She has several questions here. First, she asked about when the pandemic requires universities and schools to conduct online learning, how ready the schools is in Australia, especially Western Australia, to conduct a full-time online learning when the pandemic starts. I think she's wondering whether we are facing the same problem here, because it's quite crazy for us teachers here to start the online learning at the beginning of the pandemic. And she also asked, there are many changes or new trends in how universities operate because of the pandemic. Do you think these changes will stay after the pandemic over, or do you think they are good for universities? Please, Dr. Judith.
Okay, I think private schools were more ready in Australia because they had better infrastructure. They already had a lot of the class activities already on an online platform. Many government schools didn't have that infrastructure set up. So there were differences between sectors, but also within schools as to how ready they were. Many teachers spent the first 2 weeks, their 2 weeks of school holidays, plus the extra week they were given, preparing for online learning. And I think that was an important thing that happened in Australia, was that schools closed for school holidays and had time, gave teachers time to prepare, but they didn't get a break then, which was a bit of a problem for many. But they did have a bit of time to prepare, and there was lots of resources available. Then what they didn't have was ways to accommodate students who were used to having a teacher assistant or a teacher support person to help them. That fell through the cracks very early in the piece. Now, universities have been trending towards online learning in Australia, and I think that trend will increase. I think the universities won't return to face-to-face learning the same way that they were before. I think there will be blended learning, more online lectures, because we haven't returned to any lectures and most events are online still. And I hope that universities do this for the good of teaching and learning and not for economic reasons. I think many will be more online for economic reasons, which is unfortunate. So I think that's how I'd answer that question, those questions.
Okay, thank you. Oh well, Dr. Judy, there's two people questioning similar things here, but one see it from teacher's perspective and the other one see it as from student's perspective. This is very interesting. This is a question from Miss Neni Fitriana Dewi. I think she's a student. She tells us her difficulty in going through online learning. She mentioned that sometimes she doesn't get the point from the online learning and feel enthusiastic about doing the report assignment. She's asking for, is there any suggestion for her as students to improve her participation? But the same question is also raised by Miss Adin Gustina. I think she's a lecturer, because her question is how to increase class engagement in online learning settings. So if you have ideas for us, both for students and also for teachers or lecturers in terms of engagement in online learning setting, I think it's going to be an interesting idea to share. Please, Dr. Judith.
I think this is the million-dollar question. It's difficult. I think it has to be, our engagement has to be relatively short, because I think everybody tires from looking at the computer screen for long periods of time. And for interaction, I think we have to be very specific in what we ask students to do. We have to make it extremely interesting and relevant to them. And perhaps we need to involve much more of their everyday lives in the activities that we get them to do. Maybe some things they can do with their families. And we need to be able to connect them with their friends, because much of the research that I've done on motivation, engagement of students, one of the things is interesting and relevant. It has to be seen as important for them. The other is that they need to build a relationship, the relationship with the teacher and relationships with their peers. And if we can't, and that's how we have to work out, how do we do that online? How do we create incidental communication almost that's not formal? Because one of the issues of online learning is that it's all formal learning. One of the things about meeting online is it's all formalized. We haven't got those little incidental how are yous, etc. So it's working out ways to do that as well. And maybe setting up students who live near each other, or little groups of students who can have chat themselves somehow that's not recorded or not specific to that class, just to keep in touch. I think these are the ways that we keep engagement happening. It's got to be relevant, interesting, connected in many ways with relationships. I've studied motivation engagement for many years, and it's not a simple, it's the biggest question in education, and it's never been solved fully because it's very context dependent. And in a new context like online learning, we're still learning what's important. But I would say, don't forget social interaction and incidental connections between people, because that's what helps, and stimulating activities. That's what helps engage people.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Judith. Well, I personally think that this is a very interesting discussion. However, our time is limited, so I'd like to say thank you so much for all of the participants for joining us and raising questions. If I allow to summarize what we have discussed in the first session, we have to admit that COVID-19 brings lots of challenges and also bring up stress for many people. But then throughout that challenges, we also recognize that there are opportunities we can take. Now, as educators, the question is not whether or not we are ready to face COVID-19 and how to deal with that. Now we have to turn the questions into how good are you in coping with the situation. And I'd like to take one of the sentences that I really like from your session, Dr. Judith. It's, as an educator, we have to understand that different students learn with different way of learning and also learn in a different situation. It's a challenge. But lastly, to take educational experience to work, it takes both the teachers and also the students to work together. Thank you so much, Dr. Judith, for joining us this morning. We have a very nice discussion in this first session. Thank you so much. Well, I think it's
And
time.
all the best.
Thank you. Well, I think it's time for us to move to the second session. And I would like to introduce our participants to our second speaker. We have Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi from Universitas Indonesia. Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi earned her Bachelor of Economics from University of Indonesia. And then he earned her Master of Science Economics from Universitas Indonesia. He earned his Master of Arts from Keio University, Japan. And lastly, he earned his PhD from Waseda University, Japan. Well, Dr. Fitra Faisal has a very interesting curriculum vitae, I must say so. He is the expert staff for House of Representative Office of Indonesia on banking, development, planning, and state budget issues from 2005 to 2006. And then in 2012 to 2013, he is the expert staff of Fiscal Policy Office, Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia, Jakarta. And currently, he is the Executive Director of Next Policy and member of Advisory Board at Infra Digital Nusantara. And he is Senior Advisor to the Minister of Trade up to now. Well, he is also active in writing articles in various newspapers, including the Jakarta Post, Media Indonesia, Republika, and also in Kontan and the Conversation too. And currently, he is member of East Asian Economic Association, advisors to Universitas Indonesia Achievement Community, and also head of Center for Iluni, UI 4.0. Well, his books, we have to mention that he's been actively writing, focusing on various topics. For example, trade strategy in East Asia, globalization, productivity, and production networks in ASEAN, and many more. And today, he will share to us about post-COVID-19 recovery, empowering youth or employment, harnessing innovation. So for the second session, I would like to invite Dr. Fitra Faisal Hastiadi. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chairman. So thank you for inviting me for this very prestigious conference. Thank you, Bu Judith, for presenting an interesting facts on Australia. Given this pandemic period, I'm very entertained with the presentation. Thank you very much for the committee for the third annual conference of management challenges and also the seventh international conference of ethics on business economics and social sciences. So allow me to share my screen. Okay, so okay, can you hear me clearly? Sometimes it's I have trouble with the bandwidth. Do I need to um, put off my video to conserve the bandwidth, or is it clear enough for you to hear me now? Okay, clear. Okay, then I can proceed. Okay, so this is very interesting because COVID-19 is actually very unprecedented shocks towards the economy and the overall sectors of the nation. Um, uh, Actually, we cannot predict when will it end. But maybe we can have some several ways to mitigate and maybe ways of escaping from the pandemic, yeah, post-pandemic era. So what will be happening with the employment, especially the youth employment? So my theme today is to empower the youth, especially youth employment, um, addressing innovation. Okay, so the COVID-19 itself is creating market fear. Fundamentally speaking, our economy, the economy is quite robust for several years. So the macroeconomic indicators is actually quite solid, although we have several homeworks to be done, but the fundamentals is actually quite solid. So if we compare the situation in 2020, in 2008, and also in 1998, we are quite progressing well. We have these macro prudentials and also the micro prudential. We have the independence of the central bank. We have also the Financial Service Authority that allowing us to survive for a series of crises post 1998. And also in 2020, the condition, the financial sector is also quite solid. Other sectors' performances are also quite solid. And surprisingly, earlier this year in 2020, we also have a gradual increase in the export and import. From the trade perspective, yeah, we have the surplus of the trade balance, which is quite rare, yeah, from if we compare it from the several periods, from the several years. This is actually quite promising, yeah, entering 2020. In March, when we encountered the first and the second case of COVID, this is things have changed, yeah, and but if we see it again, if we trying to have a more granular explanation what happened in March, starting March from the starting of COVID, it is not the again, it is not the fundamentals. This is a given value coming from the COVID-19 itself. So fundamentally speaking, as I said before, all of the macroeconomic indicators is actually quite positive. But in March, we saw a very quite rapid depreciation on rupiahs and also the stock market. Yeah. If we see the ecosystem that surrounds the rupiahs and also the stock market, it's actually quite positive. We have the positive trade balance, which is actually a positive push towards rupiah and also the stock market. We also have the quantitative easing, yeah, the one that were happening around the world, the US, the Europe, which is actually quite positive for rupiahs. So the fair value of rupiahs, fundamentally speaking, in March is around 13,000 or 14,000 against the US dollars. But what we saw in March, that rupiahs depreciated until the level of 17,000, and we have also the stock market deep dive to around 3,000. Yeah, So this is quite alarming for the financial sectors. After careful and granular simulation, we found that the market fear was quite dominant at that time, and is still dominant until today. So it's not the fundamental, it's not the macroeconomic sectors, it's not the sectors in the economy, it's not the domestic sectors, but it's COVID, yeah, that creates the market fear. But things turn out to be a slight more positive starting in April, because at that time we have a novel policy that is called PSBB, ya, pembatasan skala besar, ya, that happened, and it was created in Jakarta. So this is a novel policy because if you compare it with other other nations, yeah, that are overcoming with this COVID-19, they're having two extremes: lockdowns and no lockdowns. We have something in between, yeah, PSBB, yeah, which is quite novel. And given all of the controversies with this novel policy, but we saw that starting from April, we have a gradual recovery, yeah, in some sectors, yeah, coming from the government policy. So the market was seeing the government is taken a good measures at that time, yeah. So the market is finally calmed down. But again, the problem is not yet overcome. There's still market fear, but the market fear itself is tamed down by the government policy. Coming to the forecast, yeah, to the COVID-19, yeah, how it's impacting the economy. So we have several scenarios. So this is not the updated version of the scenarios and the simulation. I have one. This is that is still ongoing. Yeah, the simulation. So we have the worst scenarios. Yeah, about minus 2% of economic growth in this 2020. Yeah, because of the pandemic. So the problem is not the sectors, it's not the macroeconomic indicators. The COVID itself is actually the problem. So if we tame the COVID, we tame the problem. Okay, so sometimes, and some economists, maybe some pundits compare between the health variables versus the economic variables. This is actually not true. It's not comparable. It's not even comparable. So in the time like this, in the time of COVID-19, the real problem is COVID. It's not the economy, but this is the COVID. Yeah. So, our simulation suggests, yeah, several simulations suggest that COVID-19 is the problem. So if you tackle the problem of the COVID, actually you're solving the problem. Okay, you're solving the whole problem. Okay, so the idea is how to make the curve flat. So that is the idea. So if we have the flattened curve, so we will be having a more solid rebound on the economy. Okay, so that is the idea of how handling this pandemic. This is not the economy, but it's the health problem. Okay, so how bad is it? According to our several simulations, we can have an additional 7 to 10 million, maybe more, yeah, 10 million of people being unemployed. So this is on top of what we're having. The unemployment rate, or the unemployment numbers is about 7 million, yeah, in 2019. This is the marginal, yeah, this is the additional figure of the unemployment. So in 2019 we have around 7 million of people being unemployed, we can have an additional 10 to 15 million of people being unemployed. So over 20 million of people will be unemployed given this pandemic. So this is I'm also in including the informal sectors within this calculation. So maybe more, 20, 25, maybe more, yeah, because of the pandemic. So this is a worst situation for us. And um, the unemployment, so the shocks itself. So there is a famous saying from Jean-Baptiste Say, so the supply creates its own demand. Now, in the time of COVID, the supply contraction creates the demand contraction. Yeah. So coming to certain sectors that includes high mobility, yeah, because you restrict the mobility, you have uh, high employment level, quite a considerable shock within that sector, especially the trade, hotel, restaurant, and groceries, and retail stores, and so on and so forth. But uh, these very sectors will affect the unemployment level in these sectors, and because this employment um, level in these sectors is function as the demand for also the other sectors, so this creates the so-called Keynesian supply shocks, domino effect. So all sectors were being affected. Yeah. So at first, all sectors were being affected, although several sectors may survive. Yeah. So after 2 months of the first case of COVID-19, we have several sectors that are quite surviving. Yeah, and be championing all of the pandemics. So this is not unique in Indonesia, of course. Yeah, we have the demand shocks coming all over the globe. So this is actually the homogeneous environment that is coming towards all the globe. Yeah, we treat this as an exogenous variable. Yeah, we have the demand shock, which is quite homogeneous. Yeah, and is quite shocking and unprecedented, and it affects all part of the globe. Several sectors are surviving. This is taken from the EFC analysis, the decode EFC analysis. We have several sectors that are quite surviving and championing from this pandemic. We have agricultural sectors, e-commerce, ICT, personal healthcare, food and processing, medical supplies. So after a careful simulation, we also found the same thing for Indonesia. Yeah, we have this product resiliency towards this pandemic. Here, uh, uh, the what do you say, the silver lining is coming from the ICT sectors. Yeah, we have the product resiliency. Yeah, all over the place. Yeah, towards the ICT sectors. So the potential winners, the silver lining, the glimpse of hope are coming from the ICT sector. So if you want to increase the employment level conditions post COVID, yeah, uh, recovery period, yeah, if you want to expedite the recovery period, yeah, post COVID, so you need to engage more with the ICT sectors. Okay, um, I understand that most of you here are coming from the education sectors. Yeah, we have teachers, school teachers, and we have also some educators from for the universities. Um, Actually, if we see the educational service sector here, towards this dashboard is still surviving. Yeah, if you compare to other sectors, this is still surviving. Yeah, I myself is also
I'm sorry, Dr. Fitra, we're losing your voice here. Dr. Fitra, can you hear me? We're losing your voice here. Okay, participants, please wait for a while we're waiting for Dr. Fitra to get back online. Dr. Fitra, can you hear me? Okay, it seems that Dr. Fitra encountered a technical problem. Please be patient to wait for Dr. Fitra to get back into our room. While waiting for Dr. Fitra, I noticed that some of you hit the raise your hand button to deliver a question. We will have the question and answering session at the end of Dr. Fitra's speech. So you may type your question so I can read it directly when he finished his speech to cut off the waiting time. If you're streaming via YouTube, you can also type your question in the comment section. Or the chat section, and we can actually read that for you as well. Yeah, Dr. Fitra is currently working on to reconnecting to our Zoom meeting room. We will be connected again real soon.
Okay, sorry, it's a bit of connection problem. So maybe
Okay,
I will
thank you.
Turn off my video to conserve bandwidth. So bear with me with a moment. Okay, so okay, so where were we? Here. So I will I turn off my video to conserve bandwidth. Okay, so a bit of connection problem here. Okay, now where was it? Okay, so I serve as the advisory board of Infrajitan Nusantara, who serves for a digital payment system for schools, and we see that the transactions, within this pandemic, we have an increased transaction of 200 to 300% of transaction compared to before pandemic. So the idea is you can survive as long as you can engage with the ICT sectors. That is actually the caveat of this pandemic. Okay, so we have also other sectors that are quite, what do you say, tortured by the crisis, by the pandemic, but they can escape from the pandemic as long as they can engage more with the ICT sectors. Okay, so then coming to the next slide. Sorry. Okay, so the other question. So this is actually the $1 million question. What will determine the shape of recovery? We have 4 variables. Yeah, the first is the household ability and willingness to spend. Okay, so within this variable, this is the very economic agent that is quite powerful for the economy. So we have 2 factors coming into play. Yeah, the first is the ability to spend. The second is the willingness to spend. Okay, several studies coming from the MITs and also the Chicago universities. There is measuring the impact of COVID-19 in the US. They saw that restriction, the economic restriction, the lockdowns and restrictions in mobility in the US is a bit of a twitch for the economic contraction. This is not very dominant that causing the economic contraction. So this is not the restriction that is that we worry of. What we worry of is actually the willingness to spend. So this is happening in the US, because the middle class people, the upper class people, they they conserve the spending. Okay, they don't spend as much as before, because of the risk factor. So the risk factor is coming from the COVID-19. So this is there. So it's not the restrictions, and this is also true, partially true for Indonesia. So from our several simulations, it's also suggesting that it's not the restrictions. This is the fear of the people, especially the upper 20% of income level, which is quite dominant in the consumption. So when we try to recover, to escape from the pandemic, of course, the 40% of the bottom income level is also important. We need to push their income level. We need to help their suffering in the pandemic. Of course, that is true. We need also to give the stimulus to them, but we need also to be careful that the 20% of income level, the upper 20% of income level, which is actually not having a significant shock during this COVID recovery. Some of them might experience increased transaction, hundreds of percent of increased transaction and increase of wealth. So it's not coming from the ability to spend. It's coming from the willingness to spend because of the risk factor. The risk factor, the COVID-19. So we need to push this. We need to overcome the COVID, to overcome the fear. Okay. Then we have also the state and local government finances. Okay, the state and local government now are trying their best to push the economy with this fiscal stimulus. Okay, but one thing for sure is we need to have sustainable financing. Or else if we don't have any sustainable financing, with the expanded deficit on the national budget, maybe we'll be facing another problem in the future. Business bankruptcies. Okay, this is also a problem. So when business went bankrupt, it is hard to revive them. Okay, so in the future, in the middle and the long term, it is hard to revive them. In the recovery period, it is hard to revive them. So we need to maintain their balance. We need to maintain their business, so that they won't be bankrupt. And another thing is human capital. Preserve or not to preserve. Okay. In this pandemic period, they lost job. They are being unemployed. And we need to also to sustain the level of productivity, or else we cannot have a solid rebound. So they will lose their productivity in the future. So to have a general conclusion on this, we need to avoid the phenomena that is called the economic hysteresis. The economic hysteresis is the phenomena, the very phenomena that will be happening if the government cannot support this fourth agent. Instead of having a V-shaped or a Z-shaped recovery, maybe we will be having an L-shaped recovery, which is not a recovery curve. We'll be facing a downturn in the economy in the future. So we need the two factors in mind. The health variables, we need to overcome the COVID, and then the fiscal variables, we need to expedite the fiscal stimulus towards the economy. So given our several simulations, we have this impact on the fiscal stimulus. If we have the realization of the overall stimulus, 100% of fiscal stimulus, this can help the economy. We can have an additional 3.96% of the output. We can have this, but maybe until August, per August, we only have 1% of the push factor, yeah, coming from the fiscal stimulus. So this is, yeah, we need to ignite this to avoid depression. Recession is just on the door, yeah, so we cannot avoid recession. What we can avoid in the future is depression, yeah, as long as we can support the very economic agent, so we can also push the health variables and the fiscal stimulus, we can avoid the future depression. Okay, but the problem is now that we are currently facing, we are lagging behind. Yeah, in order to survive and strive for the future, we need also to, what do you say? Pak Jokowi said in the speech in August 16, yeah, he said something about how to membajak the opportunity, yeah, how to utilize the opportunity during COVID-19. And this is actually quite happening. Although we are quite lagging behind in terms of global production network, yeah, from our several ASEAN partners, yeah, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and also Vietnam. If I put Vietnam here, Vietnam is also ahead of us. Okay, but in terms of COVID, we have the disruptions in the global production network, and we have the opportunity to seize the opportunity, yeah, within this COVID. As long as we can push, yeah, those two variables that I explained earlier, the health variables and also the fiscal stimulus, because we have within this COVID period, we have two what do you say, phenomena that is coming into play. Yeah, first is China factor. The second is relocation factor. China factor is coming because China is currently growing, but the industry is still suboptimal. So they need some production inputs from ASEAN countries. Okay, so this is a good news from several ASEAN countries, especially one Indonesia. We can actually entertain China more. Yeah, several in this several months, our export to China is quite increasing. Okay, and this, the second phenomenon is the relocation factor. US and some European countries, they wanted to expand their portfolios. Yeah, they don't want to have what do you say, a focal and what do you say, independence. Yeah, they want to be independent from China. Yeah, in terms of this production network, in terms of the input of production, and they want to expand their portfolios. So they are going, some of them are going to ASEAN countries as a part of the alternatives of what do you say, their industry. So this is also our opportunity. But these opportunities will be just an opportunities. We cannot seize these opportunities if we cannot handle those two variables, health variables, and also the second is to expedite the fiscal stimulus. Okay. Another thing that is also important, which is actually our theme today, is the labor productivity here. Yeah. So what needs to be done? Yeah, to increase the overall global participation and to push the recovery rate. Yeah. In the future, we need also to increase the labor productivity, labor cost. This is because this is also one of the most important factors, yeah, towards recovery period. And if we put things into the perspective, yeah, if we have a broader perspective towards the future, yeah, if we what do you say, fix the labor productivity, yeah, we will have the what do you say, we can have the ability to escape from the middle income trap. Yeah, our calculations suggest that the windows of opportunity is quite thin. Yeah, it's until 2030. Yeah, so until that period, until 2030, we need at least 6.5% of economic growth. Yeah, 6 to 6.5% of economic growth. So we can achieve that as long as we can push the labor productivity. Yeah, so that is actually the focal point of the future. Um, so it lies on innovation, yeah, FDI intensity, and also the productivity level. How to escape from middle income trap. So I can give my book later to the committee, and then the committee can give it to the participants, yeah, for further readings. And okay, so according to um, the, another simulation, the output gap using the Haldreich-Prescott filter, we can actually achieve that momentum, that very momentum in 2020. So if I stretch, yeah, here the series, yeah, we can seize the momentum in 2020, yeah, in order to increase the labor productivity and increase the labor participation, and also our participation in global production network. We had the momentum in 2009, in 2014 and 2015, yeah, and also in 2009. Okay, but we lost the momentum because we cannot we cannot push the labor productivity that constrain the export, that constrain the investment. Okay, we lost it here and we lost it here, yeah, here and here. We can have another momentum, yeah, in seizing higher economic growth momentum, yeah, starting from 2020. Yeah, we can utilize the pandemic towards a giant leap. It's not only leapfrogging, but maybe we can have the quantum leap as long as we can increase the labor productivity. How? Yeah, one of which towards technology. Yeah, technology. So I have several slides. I skip the slides, and then maybe we can stop here. Yes, this is the joint collaboration between the University of New South Wales, National University of Singapore, University of Sydney. Yeah, our paper about the financial technology and social inclusion in Indonesia. Okay, so here we have the problem of labor productivity. Okay, yeah, we have a low labor productivity. We have a low level of education. Yeah, towards all sectors of the labor. But we have opportunity. As long as we can utilize the technology, we can escape, yeah, and we can utilize and we can seize the momentum, yeah, in the future. So this is our field work towards several unicorns and also several startup companies. We also saw the employment pattern towards that companies. Okay, and what is interesting here, we have actually this community-based startup, user-based startups. They are actually providing the knowledge spillover. As you can see here, yeah, this is an object driver. Maybe the education level is middle, middle or high school, yeah, high school graduates, yeah, Indonesia. So he explained the technology, yeah, to PhD holders, yeah, from University of Indonesia, University of New South Wales, University of Sydney. He explained the technology, the very technology. High school graduates explained the technology, and he is quite tech savvy, yeah, when he explained it to us. Yeah, so we have the opportunity actually. So we have the knowledge spillover. Yeah, even the high school graduates can be tech savvy. And another thing here, iGrow. iGrow is a local startup based in Depok, yeah, near my campus in UA Depok. iGrow, once, if I'm not mistaken, if it is not Bloomberg or maybe Financial Times, considered iGrow as Farmville in reality. Yeah, Farmville in reality. If you know Farmville, so this is a Farmville in reality. Okay. What is interesting from this startup is, if you can see here, from the peasants, from the farmers here, only maybe elementary school graduates, they only can read and write, yeah, only from the basic level of education, but they are becoming street scientists, yeah, they are becoming street scientists because this iGrow, having this knowledge spillover towards this farmers, yeah, they so these very farmers, these low educated farmers, they're what I say, experimenting with the best and optimal what I say chemicals, yeah, to provide organic fertilizers, these very farmers, elementary graduates, elementary
Sorry,
school graduates.
Dr.
They can
Fitra.
be, yes,
You have 5 more minutes to the question and
yes.
answering
No,
session.
I'm wrapping up the session. Thank you. Okay, these very farmers, elementary school graduates, they're becoming the street scientists. Okay, so what can we learn from them? What can we learn from this tech-based startups, tech-based company? Is sometimes we are afraid that this post-pandemic, yeah, with this high tech involvement in the future, this will displace these workers, low educated workers. But this is not the case for the some anecdotal case that I found in the field. Yeah. So this tech-based startups provides the knowledge spillover, yeah, to these low educated people. So even these low educated people can play a dominant role. Okay. So the point is, in order to engage more, in order to survive this post-pandemic, we need to have collaboration, quadruple helix collaboration. We need the industry, we need also the university, we need also the government, and also community. Yeah, this is the community-based approach, community-based, user-based engagement, user-based approach. Yeah, if we can have this into the national level, yeah, we can adopt this into the national level. Maybe we can seize the day. We can have higher labor productivity, yeah, with this greater collaboration, and we can escape from the middle income trap, yeah, and we can escape from the phenomena, yeah, from being old before becoming rich. Okay, thank you very much for the attention, and I stop here. Okay, I give it to Ms. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fitra. We already have several questions here. So firstly, I'd like lots of questions actually. So firstly, I am going to read the first 3 questions for you to answer. And if we still have time, then we can go on to the next question. The first question is from Clara Ika Palupi. I would like to ask Mr. Fitra, during the pandemic in Indonesia, the government provided pre-employment assistance and wage subsidies. In your opinion, which one is more effective at reducing unemployment during this pandemic? Do you want to answer one by one, or should I go with 3 and then you answer all of them?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just have a lost connection there a bit. Can you have rephrase the questions again?
Okay, sure. She would like to ask if during the pandemic in Indonesia, the government provided pre-employment assistance and wage subsidies.
Okay.
In your opinion, which one is more effective at reducing unemployment during this pandemic?
Okay, so both are important, but we have stages. Okay, in the first period, on the first stage of recovery, we need the wage subsidy. Yeah, why? Because the industries are suffering. They're having relatively high cost of production, but they don't have the market yet. Okay, the market is still very volatile. So in order to sustain their level of productivity, we need maybe wage subsidy and also electricity subsidy. Okay, so that is important to maintain the industries, because if they went bankrupt, if they're bankrupt now, it is harder for us to revive the industry. So we need to have this, basic level of productivity, yeah, with wage subsidy and also electricity subsidy and also other subsidies to the industries. What about the pre-employment and training, services, to the unemployed persons? This will coming into play in the second stage of recovery. Uh, in the second stage of recovery, we have the shovel-ready project to absorb employment. The shovel-ready project to absorb employment. But several, what is it, labor, they need to adjust, in order to switch sectors. We need labor flexibility. In order to create this so-called labor flexibility, we need this training, pre-employment and so on and so forth, so that they can adjust when the time is actually basic. When the second at the second stage, when we need the labor, when we have the shovel-ready project, and with the labor flexibility in place, we can absorb them, with this pre-employment, with this prior training. So both are important. So, but it's depend on the stages.
Okay, the second question is from Nurul Invita. Indonesia's economic growth during pandemic shows a minus number, even though the government has implemented Pemulihan Ekonomi Nasional or PEN program. I want to ask to Dr. Fitra, how are the methods to increase economic growth after the pandemic?
Yeah, so thank you. Two variables, okay? Health indicators and also fiscal push. Health indicators, as I earlier my earlier discussion, on these health variables, because our simulation suggests that if you handle the health problems, if you flatten the curve, you will have a more solid rebound. So from our previous simulation, if we can have the curve to be flattened around June or July, we can avoid recession. Because the willingness to spend on the middle class is actually one of the most important. And what they see, when they need to spend is the risk factor. The risk factor is coming from the COVID-19. So if you tackle the COVID-19, so we can escape from recession, and also we can have a higher growth. Maybe we can have a V-shaped recovery, or maybe a Z-shaped recovery. And the second is the fiscal stimulus. As I suggest earlier, that if we can have 100% of realization of the fiscal stimulus, around 600 or 700 trillion of rupiahs, we can have an additional growth of 3.96%. An additional 3.96%, almost 4% of growth. Okay, we have the downside factor, the COVID-19 minus growth, and we have the push factor coming from the fiscal stimulus. If we can put them together, we can have positive growth this year, 2020. But clock is ticking. I think 2020 will be facing minus growth.
Okay, indeed, it's already October. Well, the next question is from Ibu Mimi Nur Aizia. Dr. Fitra, we realize that ICT is going to play more significant role in the future economy. What can you suggest to the university for preparing our students to be more competent in ICT, not only for applying jobs, but also to prepare their own business?
ICT will play a dominant role in the future. If you see, several investors are coming. Facebook, PayPal, they now are investing in GoPay. We know Facebook is a giant player. In the world, they're joining with Gojek. We also have PayPal, the already established payment system. Way before GoPay, but they joined Gojek. One thing that is very important first is the localities. The localities. As Jack Ma once said that you cannot defeat the crocodile in the Yangtze River. So that is the localities. That is why Facebook PayPal, they join GoPay. They don't put their own company here, but they join with GoPay to what do you say, strengthening these fintech, yeah, payment system. Okay, of course we have Facebook, yeah, as an entity, but in terms of the Facebook Pay, Facebook are joining with Gojek. Okay, and another case with Uber, yeah. Although Uber is also a big player in the world, but again, because they cannot have these localities, yeah. So yeah, we know that Grab now is merging with the Uber. Uber is acquired with the Grab because they don't have the localities in the Southeast Asia. Okay, so there is one of our comparative advantage. Yeah, so that is the idea. But this won't be sustainable if the government cannot push the investment in the infrastructures. Just like we experienced earlier, yeah, I have a lost connection. Yeah, I live in Depok, but the connection is not that stable. Yeah, you know, Depok, Jabodetabek, yeah, still in Java, yeah, yeah, near Jakarta, but I have the connection problem. So as long as the government cannot focus on that sectors, cannot see the potential in the ICT sectors, it won't be sustainable. Yeah. Um, yeah. So there's say about it. ICT sectors will play a dominant role. So whether you use it or you're being marginalized.
Okay, I think we still have 5 minutes for another question. Please allow me to deliver one more question, Dr. Fitra. This one is from Megawati Moraputri. In the unemployment by sector graph, Keynesian supply shocks due to COVID-19. There is information that the economy has stopped, and in this situation, many workers have stopped working and lost income. What are the steps of the government in overcoming this problem? Because as we know, human needs must be met too.
Yeah, for the severely unemployed person, yeah, um, the government have this BLT, yeah, the cash transfer, yeah, to the most vulnerable people, and we have actually, according to World Bank, we have the 120 million of people that is categorized as the aspiring middle class, which is actually near poor, yeah. Given this pandemic, this 120 million of people is quite vulnerable. Okay, so government is pushing that, although it's actually quite minimum, yeah, because we have low budget, yeah, we have this fiscal capacity, which is quite constraining, yeah, in this pandemic period. Another thing to have in mind that sometimes people they if we see the employment figure, yeah, for example, now they are actually employed because they are not capable of being unemployed. Yeah, sometimes people because they are very poor, they cannot handle to be unemployed, so they will do anything to be employed, anything, yeah, anything. So sometimes if you see the unemployment figure, yeah, some of the unemployment, maybe they are coming from the university graduates and so on and so forth, they are capable, more of the capable to be unemployed because of what? Because they can still have funding from their parents, for example, yeah. They are surviving the unemployment. But there are certain people, they cannot survive if they're being unemployed. So they are now employed because of the condition. Okay, sometimes you need to be careful with the data. Okay, if you want to cover all of the people which is vulnerable, you need to cover the all 120 million of people, which is quite hard because of the low fiscal capacity. Another thing, yeah, because they're now unemployed, they're being displaced from their jobs. If they cannot maintain the productivity level will be dropped. That's why we need the pre-employment scheme, yeah, which is coming into play in the second stage of the recovery, yeah, so that they can enter the shovel-ready project, okay, and they can maintain their productivity level. Yeah, on that perspective, the government is still on the right track.
Okay, well, it's been a very nice discussion that we had with Dr. Fitra. We thank you so much for spending your time with us, for sharing your thoughts and also your ideas. Well, one of our participants, Bapak Bambang Suprayitno, asked whether we will share the soft file. Yes, we will share it later on. And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Fitra also going to share your book, isn't it? Sorry, we cannot hear you, but I see you smiling. So if it's a good news, we're going to share it with the participants as well.
Yeah, I'll share it later on.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, if I may summarize what we had from the second session, if in the first session we're talking about how we cope with COVID-19 in terms of education system, now we're talking about economy, how we can build our economy back to be stronger than yesterday. Two important things that I take notes today is that yes, it takes time to recover, and we must remember that it's not only one stage, but it actually took, it will take multiple stages to recover fully. And always remember that collaboration from different parties, from educators, from businessmen, from many sectors is needed to go back strong again. Well, we cannot stress enough gratitude to Dr. Fitra for joining us today. Thank you so much. The second session has been completed and it was very nice. Now, I would like to invite our participants today to our third session. And we are going to have Dr. Hasbullah Asyari from University Teknologi Petronas Malaysia. Before we start, please allow me to share information about Dr. Dr. Hasbullah Asyari. Dr. Hasbullah Asyari earned his BSc in Industrial Technology from Eastern Illinois University, USA. And then he earned his Master of Science Manufacturing System Engineering from Warwick University, United Kingdom. And then he earned his PhD in Manufacturing Engineering from University Technical Malaysia, Melaka. Well, currently he has interest on quality management, production and operation management, supply chain management, business process improvement, problem solving and quality control tools, and also statistical process control. Well, currently he's teaching, as I mentioned earlier, he's teaching in University Teknologi Petronas, and he used to work as QC engineer as well in Sony Video Selangor, Malaysia. Besides his active career in publication, both in journals as also in joining conference, he's also have several consultancy project. For example, he is now ISO 9000 consultant for Kulim Technology Management Kulim Kedah, ISO 9000 consultant for Kulim High Technology Park Kulim Kedah, ISO 9000 auditor or consultant for Perbadanan Motor Nasional, ISO 9000 consultant for UUM department. Well, we're going to hear Dr. Hasbullah Asyari sharing about his thoughts and ideas regarding a topic entitled Building a Resilient Global Value Chains Post-Pandemic COVID-19. Dr. Hasbullah Asyari, let me give you time. So please share your presentation. The time is yours. We haven't heard your voice. While Dr. Hasbullah setting up for the microphone, let me remind the participants once again, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to type down your question. We will cover it later on at the question and answering session. Dr. Hasbullah will have approximately 40 minutes for the presentation, and after that, we're going for the question and answering session. Dr. Hasbullah, I'm sorry, but oh yeah, we can hear you now. Yes.
Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, clearly.
Now? Okay. It's good?
Yes, perfect.
All right. Okay. Sorry for the technical glitch.
No problem.
Okay. Assalamualaikum, and it is good morning over there, right?
Yeah, it's
it is already afternoon in Malaysia.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay, I will start my presentation. I have a little bit change to the topic for the discussion today. First of all, I would like to thanks the conference committee and also the university for inviting me to give this speech or presentation today. And also thank you for all participants that have waited till this moment to be with our program today. Let me introduce first myself before I start. Okay, I think the chair lady has explained about myself just now. As mentioned, I'm currently working with Petronas University, and also my current interest now is on sustainable supply chain. I'm doing some research with national grants and some private grants on sustainable supply chain. I'm currently working on research on sustainable supply chain in social business, and also a study on also in sustainable supply chain. Okay, to start with my topic today, we are talking about how pandemic COVID-19 affects the global value chains. Why global value chains? I will explain in my presentation later on. So this is the presentation outline. I'll be talking about the overview on the COVID-19 pandemic and also COVID-19 and its effect on the world economy. Wait, I have to move this a bit. Okay, all right. Okay, and also COVID-19 and its effects on global value chain, building resilient global value chain post-pandemic, and also the role of Industry 4.0. Hopefully, I could cover this on time. I have about 30 minutes to complete my presentation. So the objective of today's speech or presentation is not about providing a quick solution to this problem, because this is when we talk about this pandemic, and when we talk about the effects on the value chain, and when we talk about the value chain itself, they are complex. So the objective of this presentation today is to share with you some facts and opinions on what the latest research has been done on this issue, so that it could be a catalyst for future research, discussion, and academic discourse that could help to propagate a better solution in the future. When we talk about this COVID-19, it's a very sad things actually to discuss. But as human, we believe that God created problems for us to be stronger, to find better ways to contribute to the humanity. Although this pandemic will take a lot of lives, this pandemic will create a lot of human problem to the human and humanities. People are losing jobs. People are losing their loved one, their relatives, parents, and so on. And a lot more things that we could be seeing in the future. But we pray to God that we will be over with this soon. And in Malaysia, sadly, yesterday and in few weeks ago, the statistics of the cases has started to climbing again. And yesterday we have a record. So far the highest during this pandemic. We have about almost 300 cases yesterday. That could be due to various reasons, and so looks like we are quite still far away from this pandemic. And if we go to the history, and we can see that this COVID-19 pandemic, what is the difference between pandemic and epidemic? They have similarities, but there are differences. I think the word P there, help to differentiate, give the meaning of this term pandemic. Epidemic are the disease that infected group of people, whether they are in a local community or in a region or in a certain area. But when we say pandemic, the P there, like a passport that give this, that the disease travel throughout the world. So this COVID-19 is not a small thing, because when I searched through internet, I found that the last we have this kind of disease is 1918. So you imagine in 1918, now we are in 2020. Yeah, it's almost similar effect. Millions of people died because of this. And when you went through history, you will see that this kind of pandemics not only will cause the life, but also will cause the livelihood of human. This will affect the economy, and we have seen this, how that create tension between countries last time, with the fall of currency and so on. So it's good to have this kind of forum, this kind of webinar, so that we can discuss, we can have discourse to come up with solution for the future post-pandemic. How could we go through life with a better way of doing things? So I will discuss this in the perspective of supply chain or the value chain, because this is my area of study. And when we talk about this pandemic and its effect on the economy, we can have how it impacts the economy through three essential features. One is the one, like I mentioned before, this pandemic is a global phenomenon. I have this map here. You see, started from in China, where it created shock in the value chain, shock in the supply and demand, yeah, and then it moves throughout the world. And currently, still in Europe and in North America, and also in some Asian country, people are still struggling to overcome this pandemic. So this is one special characteristics of this COVID-19. We have before and recently a lot of epidemic that occur years back, but it is more local, or it's not really spread throughout the world. Yeah, so the COVID, how it affect economy because of this phenomena, because it spread throughout the world. And I'll show that how when it's affected the world throughout, because nowadays people are interconnected in doing business. Yeah, they are interconnected mostly by the value chain or the supply chain. So that disrupt the supply chain, and that cause a shock and cause distress and also eventually cause a problem to to human. All right. And second, the effects of pandemics are multidimensional, that include public health and economic activities. There is not only has the impact on health, or in some cases there are some like a financial crisis that will have impact on the economic well-being. But this pandemic it affects both health and economic activities. Then they are interconnected. Then that create the complexity of the problems. All right. And we have to have the trade-off balance between which one that we want to solve, whether we want to focus on the health, but somehow it will influence the economic activities, or we want to relax the control and allow more economic activities, and it will have impact on the health. Like recently what happened to my country in Malaysia, we have uplift the MCO, and now economic activities are more vibrant. But recently the case climbed again. We see a sudden increase in the cases, and the ministers just announced that all university will have to go back to the online mode, and more MCO will be imposed, confinement. So and then that will eventually affect the economy activities. So this is one of the other essential features of the pandemic. And the third is the pandemic is contagious. It's not only for health but economy. That's why I choose to discuss about the effects on the value chain, because it is a chain between supplier and a customer that will be affected. Yeah, one of the several supplier affected by the pandemic, and then it will have these effects on the rest. So it is that's why it is a big thing that what happened today, because it is contagious for both health and economy. Okay, and then we are still uncertain of the future of this pandemic. Either it will go down, or it will flattering, or it's going to spike again, or something to be predicted in the future. Because in Malaysia, we thought we are already almost in control, but suddenly yesterday it spiked and created a record in this COVID-19 cases in Malaysia. So I mentioned just now, we are balancing between two hard things in our life. Like this proverb, rock and a hard place. Either we want to save the lives, or we want to improve the livelihood of human. If we do the confinement, social distancing, and so on, that could help in improving the health and lives of people. But at the same time, it created a problem in the economy. It created disruption in the value chain. And so we are juggling between these two, whether to focus on these lives and or uh, to focus on this livelihood of the people, because it's not only about lives. When we talk about livelihood, it will affect not only economy, it will result in family problems, in mental health, and a lot of other things. So this is so that's why when we talk about the solution of this pandemic to economy or to the value chain, it's not like a simple solution. And company has also abide by the government policy and decisions. Um, and we have seen that a lot of, especially those industry that are have that deal with close contact, close personal contact, like the hospitality industry, food, and restaurant, this dress beautician, those kind of industry are badly affected. And when we talk about this pandemic, we see that those that are affected, they are the small players, this small medium enterprise, and or the individuals, entrepreneurs, for example, compared to those that have a bit better capital, better cash flow, and so on. So this, when we talk about potential of research, could be an area where we could focus study on zooming into this group of people and industry, how to help them or to come up with a better way this post-pandemic to prepare if the similar thing happen in the future. Let me explain also about this term global value chain. Maybe most of you are familiar with this term, supply chain, value chain, and in my original topic, it was production or operations management, yeah, or production and operations. They are almost similar. When we talk about operations, yeah, it is more limited to a company. They are doing the same thing. A formal definition of a production or operation is a transformational process. How do you transform input into output? Yeah, the output could be in terms of goods or tangible products, or it can be in terms of a service. Yeah, so production operation is one of the core function in a company. It's very important because most of company assets will be in the operations or production, the human resource, the equipment, machinery. Almost more than 50% will be in production and operation. But nowadays, when people talk about this transformational process, we have expanded this to go across a company. It's not only confined to a function or confined into a company, but nowadays when we talk about this transformational process that transform input into output, we discuss this in terms of interrelated supplier and customer chain. They are doing the same thing, yeah. Same thing of adding value to the in terms of manufacturing, for example. What we are doing the same thing. We are the value chain or the supply chain. They are adding value to the raw materials from the upstream, the first tier supplier, and then it moves to the downstream, to various players. They are interconnected, and then it will reach to the end user or the end customers. Okay, and same thing when we talk about production operation, but we confine that into a company. I hope this is clear. Okay, this is, for example, in my example here, I show you examples of a car. Although it looks simple, a car, but when you go and disassemble the components, you will see that thousands of components they belong to hundreds or thousands of suppliers, and they are interconnected and they are everywhere in the world. Yeah, since the era of globalization, company move out. Yeah, company move out, and they are everywhere in the world. So, for example, nowadays, one national car, they couldn't really claim that it's really a national car because some components are being built or manufactured or assembly in some other countries. The final assembly will be done in other countries. Some components will be done in some other countries. So it is really multinational. So when we talk about the effects of COVID, we can see this effect. And the importance of this global value chain, because most international trade and investment take place within this global value chain. This is a trend nowadays. Although the trend has been lessened throughout years recently, but we still see that about 70% of international trade involve exchange of raw materials, parts and components. Services for business and capital goods are used by firms to produce and serve their customers. So when we talk about business activities, we talk about economy, we cannot avoid to discuss about the importance of this global value chain. And because 70% of international trade involve exchange of raw material, and they are interconnected. Yeah, you see the flow of material now go across nation. Yeah, not only in manufacturing, even when we talk about service, yeah, they are very much global. Okay, so that's why we see when COVID hit the tourism industry, it hit almost the whole players in the GVCs, in the global value chain. Not only the hotel, it affects the transportation service, it affects the hotel, it affects the airplane, and so on, because they are interconnected. One third of world production is done by a multinational enterprise, and they account for half of world trade. That's why research in these global value chains are important, and those who are in this field or interested to do a further study or to do further research, this is a good rich area to be researched in the future, especially that related to this post-pandemic or during this pandemic. How COVID-19 impacts the GVC? One, it can have a direct impact. Company in GVC stop producing due to employees' health or social distancing. This is what we have seen. Yeah, world have seen this started from what happened in China. It created the shock. They call it a supply shock, where people have to scramble for products because when COVID infected the people in China, what happened is the government has started to take strict action, yeah, to close the companies, to force people to be in their home, to confine people in their home. People cannot go to work. Yeah. So this have very much influenced the global value chain, and when people this create the shortage of the products, and when this happened, yeah, it started to create volatility, yeah, in the supply chain. Volatility is a important terms in supply chain. Yeah, the chain become volatile and uncertain. Yeah, so that create a lot of distress in the value chain. And what happened is, not only because of real shortage, and sometimes it's also due to this shortage game that the business people play. So when this happened, yeah, it created the what uncertainty in the supply chain, yeah. And when this happened, the visibility of the demand will have more problem, and it creates a term in supply chain. They call it the bullwhip effects. When the players in the supply chain, they see that there is increase in demand, yeah, they start to produce more, or they start to order more, yeah, in anticipation that more products will be needed, yeah. So it amplified toward the upstream, yeah. Although sometimes it's not real, so it creates this amplification that create the volatility in the supply chain, right? So that create a havoc or problem in the supply chain. So this is a direct impact where the company have to stop producing the product and create a volatility and distress and also disturbance in the value chain. Yeah, it will impact something happen in a country or in a production of a country that will have chain effects throughout the whole supply chain. So that's why this global value chain is important, because it will affect the well-being of the livelihood of people. And second is the indirect impact. The chain effects when production of intermediate goods in a location stop. Yeah, when like I mentioned just now, when this production stop, it will have immediate effects to the next supplier. Yeah, because in this supply chain or value chain, it is interconnected between suppliers and customers until it reach the end user. So a problem in a production in particular location, yeah, or and a particular company will have immediate effect on the rest of the those players in the supply chain. Yeah, and that will what also this indirect effect will also happen due to the impact or disruption in the international transport network, because when you have this global supply chain, you have to move the materials from one country to another country, and when the international transport network disrupted, and then that create a problem. Material cannot be moved, a lot of inventory in the pipeline, or shortage will happen. Although you still have the materials, but you cannot transport them. So it will have the COVID will have indirect impact also on the value chain. And third is the demand impact, right? Not only on the supply side. So far, what we discussed, the direct impact and indirect impact, they are on the supply side. But this pandemic also have impact on the demand impact, or they call it demand shock. Yeah. When this happen, it will complement to the problem in the supply shock. Yeah. In this demand impact, not all company will see that their demand for their product are reducing or going down, but some product will get the benefits out of this pandemic. Those for example, related to home food. Yeah, people will have to eat more at home. People will stack food, so you will see the sudden increase in the demand of this kind of products. And also delivery service. For example, here we have in Malaysia the Grab food, they call it food, Grab food, for example, just delivery, that will see a sudden increase. This increase is good for the business, but will also have a negative influence on the supply chain, because sudden surge, and then that will create the volatility in the demand in the supply chain, or when the company cannot produce because of no demand, that also create a problem. So the demand impact, whether it is positive or negative, will have both impact on the global value chain. And then we have the trade and investment policy risk ban. This is ban of certain medical supplies and growing concern, for example. Or now, many countries, for example, you see if you watch the speech by Trump, for example, or we have seen even Prime Minister in Australia, people are talking about renationalizing production, yeah, or they call it reshoring the production, trying to to localize, to bring back this production to a specific country instead of going global. So this also create, this is also an impact of this COVID. People see that the disruption of the global value chain, yeah, make people think about reshoring of their production, yeah, to produce locally, yeah, at home instead of sourcing to the international market. Okay, so these are the four impact of the COVID-19 on the global value chain. We have discussed this on this pandemic and effects. You see here, okay. You see some value chain, not they are all equally have equal negative impact due to the COVID. Yeah, some value chains are more exposed to shocks than others. You see, for example, medical devices have lesser shock, or disturbed by the pandemics or natural disaster that occur, or financial or terrorism, and so on. Yeah, but you see, communication equipment, apparel, petroleum are badly hit by this pandemic. Computer, electronic, aerospace, they are more exposed to the shocks. And disruption of this length could be in every 2 years. You will see that it is like a cycle that will happen in 1 or 2 weeks, and in 4 to 9 years, it can be. You can see the cycle that it can last to 2+ months. Yeah, especially when we talk about this COVID pandemic, yeah? It's going to take months before we could get to the new normal, or it can be, if we can get back to the old normal things that we had before. So this will happen frequent time to time, and you see, and the value chains, they are different in terms of they are exposed to these shocks. Okay, we have acute climate change, we have macroeconomic financial crisis, we have trade dispute, we have pandemic, we have terrorism, cyber attacks. They are all big things that will affect the value chains. But this pandemic, it will it will be very costly, and it will take more lead time, more years be to overcome this problem.
Dr. Hasbullah, you have 5 minutes to go.
Okay. I'm almost done. Okay, I show you this cost of the supply chain disruption. 42% of company this income, revenue before tax, all right, EBITDA, it will take 42% of their this revenue, over 1 year, every decade. So you see, the disruption is huge to a company, and eventually it will be huge to the nation. And you see in supply chain, the fragile area are the demand planning, inventory, supplier networks, transportation and logistics, balance sheet, product and portfolio complexity. Those are and how this is a survey by McKinsey on how to what the companies say about building resilient GVCs. They say about you have to have a dual sourcing nowadays to overcome this pandemic, because if you rely on one sourcing, one source only, and then you will have problems like what happened in the pandemic. This is the majority say, and 93% of these global players, they are focusing on this global supply chain to increase the resilience. Even for 44% said at the expense of short-term savings, they will do this. But the problem is they are the big player. The impact will be seen more on the small and medium player and the individual entrepreneurs. Increase inventory of critical products. And interestingly, the point to ponder, last time when we talk about just in time, we talk about sourcing from single or few suppliers. Those are considered as the best practice that people learn from Japanese. But nowadays, when during this COVID, there are literatures that start to question on this practice, because just in time would allow you to have inventory, and you have to be right sharp on the time and so on. If in the pandemic, this will create a problem, and when you rely on a single or few suppliers, centralized supply warehouse, those are strategies that company used before. There are many other things that maybe need to be relooked after this post-pandemic. Last, I want to stress on the importance of this. I have a few minutes left, but you can read from, I'll share the PowerPoint, the importance of this technology. We talk about this IR 4.0. The IR 3.0, people talk about automation and computer and automation, but in IR 4.0, we talk about smart manufacturing, and we talk about the autonomous system that create the smart manufacturing, where machine, human, the whole value chain can be interconnected and interact with each other. This could help in many ways. For example, we talk about in this planning, to build up the flexible, responsive operation. We talk about improving the quality, safety, productivity in manufacturing, and important also when we talk about the digitized automated warehouse. This is really what needed during this COVID, where people can work from far, they can have remote control, they can have this AGVs, they can have this robot to do all the things, and then with less human interaction when people are in social distancing. So these are really a solution, and company really want to go into this. COVID has accelerated the application of this IR 4.0. And also in something that I missed here in the forecasting. Because last time company have problem in forecasting where they have to forecast based on orders. But with this connectivity and data analytics, people can have real-time information. People can have real-time demand that they can avoid error in their forecasting and help in stabilizing the value chain. Okay. Last word, the cautionary word. Although this IR 4.0, the automation, this autonomous system sound what beautiful, sound great, but we have to be careful because last time there is IR 3.0, there is a term that being coined up as IT paradox. A lot of companies invest in IT, but they couldn't see the results. And from my reading and research previously, and it started to show in this IR 4.0, where the company has started to grouse their complaints on investing a lot in the technology, but they couldn't get the results. So this is something a big area to be researched. And with that, I would like to thank again the organizer for inviting me to share this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hasbullah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the question and answering session. We already have several questions here. We still have 15 minutes, and I'm going to read it one by one. Probably we can go from one question to another, yeah? So, Dr. Hasbullah, this is the first question from Professor Setiabudi Indartono. Which parts of global value chain is the most critical ones, especially in terms of economic and education issues, please?
Again, can I get the question again?
Which parts of global value chain is the most critical ones, especially in terms of economic and education issues?
In the current economic and education
issues, yeah.
So this question asks about the value chain in academic and education. Sorry, I need to get clarification of this question.
Yes, value chain. Which parts of global value chain is the most critical ones, especially when it comes to economic and education issues? That's the question.
Okay. This is very general question. How can I answer this? When we talk about this, which part of the value chain, it can vary according to the nature of this industry and according to the nature of this product or service. We cannot say that which part that we need to focus. For example, in education, yeah, all industry, whether education or manufacturing, education is part of the service, or manufacturing, yeah, they are all have their own value chain because all have this transformation process. For example, if we talk about this value chain in education, started from before we can have, we can deliver the education to the students. For example, there are interconnected suppliers and customers. There are those that provide the tangible equipment to the universities. And then the university that deliver the education to the students. If you said which one that is the most important, I couldn't really answer that because they are interconnected. Yeah, but the most important for me is to make sure that the end user, as much as possible, we want to minimize the casualties or the problem that will be impacted to the end users. For example, in education, when we talk about the education, higher education, or when we talk about education to the various level of educations, what we have to make sure that those students they will have less impact on this COVID. Yeah. So we have to make sure that the delivery throughout the value chain will have less impact. So fortunately, yeah, with this technology nowadays, the importance of this technology, it has helped to minimize this problem, where we can ensure that the delivery still happen. This is the important things, to make sure that delivery can still reach to the customers, because especially in education, yeah. So government roles in investment of these infrastructures of this technology. We have this issue even in Malaysia, in the rural area, where students scrambling to search for internet to continue their studies, since they have to be at home. So when you talk about this impact of this COVID on the value chain, I think the things that most important is how to ensure that the delivery, we minimize the issue of delivery to the end user. And in education, it is very important to the students. I hope that could answer.
Thank you so much. Another question from Rizky Octavianto, one of our students. I want to ask you, can GVCs be applied in health institutions such as hospital in the post-pandemic era? If it is can, how is the implementation?
It's not the question of whether it can be implemented or not. It is already there. In all kind of industries, they must have this supply chain or value chain, because in order to deliver the service to their patients or the customers, in case of hospital, there are series of supplier and customers that involved in the process. We can see the end is the patients. Yeah, before a doctor can deliver this or the health institution or the clinics or whatever similar to that can deliver the service to the customer, it will have a series of value or supply chain behind that. Yeah, the doctors will have to. There will be suppliers of medicine. There will be suppliers of the equipment. Yeah, and even inside the health institute, the doctor also are interconnected with the lab, with the different function in the hospital. So it's not whether it can be applied or not, but how do we understand the value chain? Value chain is everywhere in all kind of industry, whether it is in health, whether it is in manufacturing, whether it is in hospitality industry. In every kind of industry, there will be a value chain. So it's not a matter of whether we can apply, but the issue is how to improve the value chain, how to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of this value chain, especially during this pandemic. Yeah, where people cannot go to hospital, for example, to get this service. How could technology, for example, could help, or how this supply chain strategy could help in terms of people can have better service without having to go out from their home, for example. We can see a lot of cases in studies in Japan, for example, where how they take care of these old people. If I have time to relate the advancement in Japan, where a lot of old people, they are staying by themselves at home, individually. So what happened is you cannot put a camera to control their movement, to see what happened to them, because that will violate their privacy. So what happened is they have the system where they can trace the heat of the body. If something happened to these elder people, so they can trace through this heat of the body, so that then they can take immediate action. So a lot of through technology, a lot of improvement can be done to this value chain of the health. Yeah. Not the question of whether we can implement or not, because value chain is already there in all kind of business.
Okay, thank you so much. So basically, value chain is already there. Now the question is not whether we can implement it or not, but how to maximize that. Well, the last question is from Mahendra Galen. He's questioning if global value chain is applied globally, but each country has their own policy. So is there any possibility that different policies among one country and another might cause obstacles from GVC?
May cause what?
Can be an obstacle for the global value chain.
Yeah, definitely. For example, if you see the war, the economy war recently between between China and America, for example, the Trump policy, that really this creates a problem in the value chain. Yeah, of course, the government policy in terms of tax, in terms of policy on to open their economy to other country and so on, that will definitely influence the global value chain, because if the value chain is already there, and then a new policy, for example, when we see, for example, just now I mentioned about this China and America war, that will definitely disrupt the value chain.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hasbullah Asyari. We have a very wonderful discussion today. Well, if I may summarize what we have in the third session, then we can actually assure that pandemic not only affects one country or two, not only affects education and economy, but it actually affects many aspects in our life globally. And hoping that technology that we have nowadays can assist us to not only struggle but also to recover. We also have to remember that the impact is around, and what we have now is supposed to be maximized to improve what we have right now. Well, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I have to say that we have come to the end of our session today. We are supposed to have another presentation, but unfortunately, Dr. Muhammad Hasib cannot join us today due to technical problems. We are really sorry for that. And we would like to, again, deliver our gratitude to all of the speakers today for their wonderful sharing and also informative presentations. Thank you to Dr. Judith, thank you to Dr. Fitra, and also lastly to Dr. Hasbullah Asyari. Well, we hope that you enjoyed today's session. We hope that you can still join us again in the upcoming session. Now it's time for me to send back to the Master of Ceremony. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Buditiara, and also our amazing speakers for the marvelous session. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving to the next agenda, I would like to invite all of the participants to open their camera so we can have a little bit photo session of the moment, if you don't mind. Okay. Photographer is ready? Okay. Let me count down first for 5 sessions we will have. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Okay, the next picture. 3, 2, 1. The third picture. 3, 2, 1. Last one, yeah. 2 more. Okay. 3, 2, 1. And for the last one, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, For the parallel session, for the presenters, please notice that you may leave after we close this session, but please join us again in this link at 1. Then the committee will help you to distribute your account to the designated room. Yeah. And then this would be the end of my role as your host today. Before we finally close this session and moving on to the parallel session and break, I would like to express my gratitude once more to all of the guests, speakers, participants, and moderator for a wonderful session we had. I would also like to apologize if I made some mistake while hosting for today. Hope to see you again next year. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.